Last summer, I rescued my dog Tidda from an island. She had been missing for 25 days. Here's that story. I'm Claudia Kunkel, and I live in a small town called Gold Beach on the Oregon coast, close to California. Tidda is a mixed breed, but one part is definitely Australian cattle dog, also known as red heeler. That's why I wanted to give her a name relating to Australia, and I found this Aboriginal word, Tidda, which means sister. I knew the journey with Tidda wasn't going to be an easy one. She had very strong fear responses and clearly had suffered some kind of trauma. In the county shelter in California, where she was first taken in as a stray, they placed her on antidepressant medication. She was what is called shut down. They had set a date to euthanize her. However, a lady running the South Coast Humane Society in Brookings, here in Oregon, rescued her and brought her up here, where eventually I adopted her. It was pretty difficult with her for a long time. Everything in the street scared her, and she often would stop and refuse to walk further. I had to dig deep to find the patience and the wisdom she needed. Here, come on, come on. Here you go. Mostly, I found that wisdom in what previous dogs had taught me. But we bonded really well right from the start. She was happy at home and when we were walking alone on the beach. One Friday afternoon in August 2022, so 9 months after I adopted her, we had just finished a walk on this beach. It was a really good one. And I had put her back on the leash because we were approaching the trail that goes up to the car park up there. And a loose dog came running up, and he was full of energy. He was all over Tidda, and she did not like it at all. Finally, his owner noticed and started calling his name. No effect. And so she came running over, yelling his name, trying to grab him. And since Tidda was on the leash, he was like going around Tidda, and the owner was going around the dog, circling all around Tidda, and she was not liking it at all. And the owner was like lunging forward, trying to grab him on the leash. And Tidda was getting more upset. So I somehow thought that she needed to have a little room to maneuver away out of that chaos. And I made a grave mistake at that point. I let go of the leash. I'm not sure exactly what happened next, but she started running at full speed up that trail, and the other dog right behind her, and the woman ran right behind them. And I was still barefoot, so I couldn't really keep up. So by the time I made it out here to the cars, the woman had captured her dog and put him in the car, but there was no sign of Tidda. The woman took off this road in the car looking for her, but I didn't think she had run up there. I couldn't imagine that. I thought she was hiding in the bushes here somewhere. And then I got to my car And then I saw this. That was Tidda in a desperate attempt to get into the car. Waiting here for about 45 minutes, a giant RV came down this little road, and they stopped when they saw me looking like somebody who's missing a dog. And they told me their story, what they had seen. Apparently, Tidda did indeed run up this road and kept running for at least half a mile until she somehow ended up on Highway 101 and the distance there. I couldn't believe it. She went straight into the worst case scenario. The typical speeds are about 60 miles an hour. So the RV was driving there, and they saw a dog running up onto the roadway and dragging a leash. Multiple people stopped and tried to catch her, but nobody could. It caused quite a commotion. Then Tidda ran back down towards the ocean. There's an exit right here, and the RV people took that to follow her and try to help her. They told me that one of these homeowners tried to lure her into the fenced yard with some hot dogs, but Tidda didn't go for it. They saw her disappear near this blue house. Of course, I raced over there and called her and asked around and waited. Nothing. It was going to be dark soon. I wasn't sure what to do. I went to the police station and let them know. And then I went home, stunned. The next morning, I spent hours searching for her. In vain. It began to sink in that this was potentially a life-changing turn of events. This happened only about 4 miles from home. I was confident that Tidda knew the way home, but there was one big problem. The Rogue River Bridge, almost 2,000 feet long. If you're not inside a vehicle, it's pretty terrifying, even for humans. There's no way she could ever get across here. I think we need a map. So she wasn't going to be able to come home on her own, and she wasn't going to let anybody catch her. The only way was for me to go and find her. And so I went out multiple times a day, every day. I was going to do everything I could to find her, for as long as it takes. So I went online and searched, how find lost dog? And then you get lists of things you can do, which actually are pretty useful, and I basically did everything on those lists. So I had a bunch of flyers printed and posted them everywhere. I went to stores, businesses, local officials. I went door to door in the neighborhood where I lost her. I talked to random people on the beach, people riding their bike. All of this was very far outside of my normal. I'm quite a withdrawn person, but it's what was needed. Gold Beach has a vibrant Facebook community, but since I'm not on Facebook, my neighbor was kind enough to post something there for me. I also contacted the waste disposal company. That's one of the things I had seen on one of those lists online, because if there's a dead dog lying by the side of the road, they may get a call to pick them up. One local woman who has several dogs of her own stayed in regular contact with me and had all sorts of tips of where to look and who to talk to. Pet FBI and Paw Boost are 2 free online databases that I signed up with. But in the end, they contributed nothing to my search. What they did do is expose me to scammers. Tidda was missing for 3 days when I received this message. Fortunately, I had read the warning on the website about exactly this scam. They are trying to set up a Google Voice account with your details so they can get an anonymous phone number to use for other scams, or something like that. I mean, what kind of person preys on people in distress looking for their pets? Later that same day, I was contacted a second time with the same scam. And this time I was so furious. I used language that's totally out of character for me. But again, it's what was needed. And after that, they left me alone. In the 25 days that Tidda was missing, there were only 2 sightings. The first was a man who called me after he saw my flyers, and he told me that he was riding his bike the day after I lost her, and he saw her here. When she saw a person walking nearby, she was really scared and immediately ran into the bushes, and the leash was still attached. This at least gave me an idea where to focus my search, and I was suspecting this very area anyway because it's very wild and it's a perfect place to hide. I started putting out food and water in a secluded spot here every night. Then, on August 12th, exactly 1 week after she went missing, I received a phone call at 9:30 at night from a man who told me he had just seen her trying to cross the bridge. Again, people had stopped and tried to catch her, and she got scared and turned around and did not make it across. But he followed her until she disappeared here in the dark. I ran out of the house so fast, I forgot to take my phone or a flashlight. When I got there, another guy who had also briefly seen her helped me search with his excellent flashlight. And I called and probably woke up some of the campers there, but there was no sign of her. So I set up my camping chair right here and waited for her all night. Nothing. Such a frustrating near miss. She had risked her life to try to cross that bridge to get home to me. It strengthened my resolve. I had to get smarter and try harder. So I spent several nights parked next to the bridge, hoping she would try it again, but she didn't. In the meantime, someone was eating the food I was putting out, and I needed to know who. So I went and bought a trail cam and set it up every night. In the morning, I would be so hopeful when I collected the camera, but she was never on it. Day after agonizing day went by. In fact, 18 days passed by after the sighting on the bridge without any news of any kind. I feared that something terrible had happened to her. My beloved dog Blanca had died only 1 month before I adopted Tidda, so she helped me get through that grief. But now that I had lost Tidda in this terrible way, I was completely devastated. On the 25th day, I received a phone call at 7:30 in the evening. It was a lady I had talked to that morning because she lives near the bridge. She was excited. She told me that 2 minutes ago, somebody posted on Facebook about seeing a dog with a leash on an island in the river. It had to be Tidda. This was my one chance to get her. In the several minutes it took me to drive down here, 3 or 4 other people called me to tell me about it. There was an energy in the air. Almost everybody in town knew about Tidda by now, and they wanted to see her get back home. I wasn't really familiar with this island, or even that it existed. The lady's husband explained to me that I needed to go to a gravel pit in that direction, and from there you could walk across to the island at low tide. And I didn't know if it was low tide. But I did that. I went to the gravel pit. I climbed through a fence, and I remember a big black cow with a calf staring at me, wondering what I was doing. And it was actually quite far to walk to the island, and I wasn't sure I could actually make it on there. I was talking almost non-stop on the phone to various people, and finally ended up speaking to the man who posted that Facebook message, Scott. He was still watching her at that moment through what he later told me were $1,500 binoculars. I think they were worth every cent. He said Tidda was at exactly the opposite end of the island, right there. And I needed to come over here and approach from this end. I couldn't lose this chance. I ran all the way back to my car as fast as I could. And I dropped my wallet from my backpack somewhere. Didn't even notice it till the next day, but it was still there. Panting and out of breath, I finally got back to my car, and there was a sheriff's deputy looking for me. I thought maybe it was because I was trespassing, and I started to explain that I was looking for my dog, but he knew all about that. He had come to help me. To this day, I don't know how he knew. I don't know his name. But without his help, I wouldn't have gotten Tidda back that day. So we both drove over to this location. And that is the tip of the island where Tidda was. It was almost completely dark now. And Scott, on the other side of the river, was using his green laser pointer to show exactly what her position was when he last saw her before it got dark. She was in those trees at the tip of the island, curling up like she was going to sleep. Now, if I had been on my own, I wouldn't have dared to try to get into the river at night, but the deputy thought it might be possible. With his super flashlight, you could see the bottom. And so we started to wade across into the river towards the island, shoes and all. At the deepest spot, the water was about mid-thigh. And so when we got to the island, I asked him to stay behind because Tidda might be scared, and he totally got that. And then I went to those trees at the tip of the island, and I started calling Tidda. For several minutes, I called her and called her. She didn't come. And I was starting to think I'd have to come back the next morning and try again. But then I thought, I'll call her one more time. I called one more time really loud, and I think maybe she heard something in my voice that I was about to leave, because I started to hear rustling in the dry grass. And then I saw something move in the grass. And then I saw Tidda. She came towards me, wiggling her whole body, and we just happily greeted each other for several minutes. And then I picked up her leash, and we walked off almost like nothing ever happened. But then when we got to the edge of the water, she was scared. She didn't want to go in. And so I picked her up and carried her through the water while the deputy was illuminating the path. And then when we got back to the car, she jumped into my car so fast, I almost didn't have time to open the hatch first. The deputy was happy. People on the phone were happy. Scott was happy. I was happy. Tidda was happy. Two ladies from the Facebook group called me and said, wait, don't leave yet. We want to come down there and see you. So they came down and gave me a hug and saw Tidda, and they were moved to tears. It was truly a miracle, and all of it unfolded live on Facebook. It was a magical, spontaneous group effort. It was fantastic. Amazingly, Tidda was basically fine. She was extremely hungry. She had lost 11 pounds. She had some abrasions and cuts and really nasty tree sap caked on her belly. But otherwise, she was okay.
Come here, Butchkin. Come here, Butchkin. Ay, ay, ay.
The shelter where I adopted Tidda was so thrilled about her safe return. They gave me a GPS collar. That's this pink one here. My respect for Tidda really grew in this experience. She's a very clever, very tough girl. Thank you for watching Tidda's Island Rescue.